Hello, this is Dora Tarver from CreateAndManageSchedules.com, here to present to you Microsoft Project 2010. Now, I first want to point out that I'm using Microsoft Project 2010 Professional. And when you come into Microsoft Project and click on the File tab, you'll go to the Backstage area, and if you click on Help, you'll be able to see the version of project that you're using. So I'm using Microsoft Project Professional 2010. Now in Project 2010, the user interface is very different than in 2007 and earlier versions. This UI is a fluent UI because tests have proven that it's easier for people to find the features and functions that they're looking for, and it leaves the work area less cluttered. Now there's a lot of detail in the Fluent UI that I'll walk you through, but before we do that I want to point out that what you'll see here in the toolbar section is really different depending on your screen resolution. So to help illustrate that, let me go to Photoshop. What you see in Photoshop here is an example of what you'll see in a 600 by 800 resolution, 1024 by 768 resolution, and a 1440 by 900, which is what I have on my laptop. Notice that in the 600 by 800, the toolbar appears shorter than it does in the 1024 by 768. You can see the group names like tasks, but notice that tasks in the 1024 by 768 actually has more information that it's displaying as opposed to just images. For example, insert has these buttons that you see here. Insert here has a drop down which would give you access to this, but in the higher resolution you're able to see more. And likewise with the 14 by 900, which is what I have on my laptop, if I drag this over you'll see that the toolbar has quite a bit more that it shows you in the very higher resolution. So for example in 800 by 600 the insert is just one button. In the 1024 by 768, insert shows not just one button, but all four of these buttons. And in the 1440, you'll see everything laid out, and you'll be able to access it more easily. So, depending on your screen resolution, your toolbar will appear differently. And for the courses that I'm stepping through, we're going to have the resolution set to 1024 by 768. So, going back to the UI. In Project 2010, the user interface is designed to look very similar to Microsoft Office. And again, this is their new Fluent UI because they went through extensive testing that showed that people found it much easier to navigate and find information that they're looking for. Now, in this new UI, you'll be able to find the capabilities that you're looking for much easier. So for example, depending on what you're in, right now we're in a Gantt chart, and notice that the toolbar up here says Gantt chart tools. What you see in the tabs and on these tools will depend on where you are. If I go to the resource sheet, notice that the format tab changes to the resource sheet format tab, and the functions that are available here are specific to the resource sheet. What you'll find here in the ribbon will vary depending on your resolution, as well as which view you're in. Now what we have here are tabs at the very top. And the tabs are basically logical groups of tools. So for example, on the Tasks tab, we have a logical group for viewing, for clipboard, for fonts, for scheduling, for tasks, for inserts, and within each group are specific functions. Now another detail about the toolbar and functions is that if you were typing in, let's say, a task here, or if I select the cell and right click, there's a little pop-up toolbar. So basically as you're navigating through, you'll notice that there's an ability to control the content that you selected from a toolbar that will pop up when you right click. These are called mini toolbars, and they help facilitate making changes directly in the cell as you're above it. So again, you just right click and it'll appear. Now going back to the Backstage is a new concept that you'll find when you click on the File tab. And when we click on File, this is the Backstage view of your file. And here, basically you can access the more frequently used features for managing your project file, such as saving it, opening it, getting information about it, seeing your recent files, creating a new one, printing, saving, sending, help, options. There's a lot of information that's available from the Backstage view. So again, when you click on File, you'll be brought to the Backstage area, and this contains all of the more frequently used features within Microsoft Project. Now going back to the ribbon, as you can see, there's a default ribbon format, but you can also add your own tabs and groups to a ribbon as well. One way to do this is simply to right-click on the ribbon, and you'll see a little pop-up menu that has customize the ribbon, minimize the ribbon, add quick access toolbar, which by the way is this little toolbar at the very top over here. Customize quick access toolbar. So if you want to customize the ribbon, when you click on that option, it gives you the ability down here to create a new tab, a new group, to rename, etc. So if I drag this down a little bit, you'll see that we have a task tab, and on the task tab there's a view group, which you see over here. There's a clipboard group, which you see over here, font, etc. And if I expand, for example, font, if I expand font, you'll see within that group are specific commands, and those are the commands that you'll find in this section. So we can actually build our own tab of the commands that we prefer to see more frequently within this version of Project. It makes navigation very easy. So that's one of the nice features of 2010. Now another feature of 2010 that I want to highlight right now is that we have multiple undos. So I'm just going to put in some task data here, and you'll notice that up here is the undo, and if I click on the arrow you can see that it remembers everything that we've been doing for quite a while. In previous versions of Project you can only undo once, but we can undo multiple times in this version, which is a very useful feature. Now another feature is that there's a wide range of formatting options available here. You can actually change the background and foreground color of a cell. I'm just right-clicking and selecting a color from the toolbar that pops up and clicking on Save, and we can see those changes. Likewise, you can just change the font color for a cell. So you have more control over how things appear in each cell. We will get into formatting text styles shortly, but this is unique to allowing you to change the format of cells. It was not previously available in other versions. Now let me just undo this. Okay, so I saved it. That's as far as I can go. So if you want to undo it, actually, I can go in and change the background color to no color. And then hit Save. Now I also want to point out that there are viewing options that have been optimized in this version as well. When you go to the View tab, you'll notice that, you may have noticed already, that we have a timeline displayed here. And the timeline, actually, let me pull up a different schedule here so you might see this better. Okay, so here's a good example of a project plan. I have a template here shows me, it has a milestone of when my project begins and when it ends and some tasks in between. And on the View tab, under the Split View section, I have a timeline checkbox. And basically, when that's on, you'll see a timeline across the top of your project plan, which contains information on your tasks, where you can see important events and phases in your project lifecycle. So I want to point out, when the timeline is checked, you'll see this timeline button. And if you want to see specific milestones in your project in the timeline, you can add them by, if you double click on the task and bring up the task information, there's a display on timeline option. So let's say we want to have this milestone, begin my project, whatever its name is, on the timeline as a milestone. I simply check this display on timeline, click on OK, and there it is. Let's say that this beta 1 is a milestone or something we want to see in the timeline. So I'll go ahead and check that. And now it is appearing on the timeline as well. So to display or turn off the timeline, simply go to the View tab and then check the timeline option. And this is another fast way which you can allow users to know what is happening in your project and when across a timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off just to save a little bit of space here. And the other feature I want to show you is the team plan. We're going to actually open up a different project file that has resources in it. I'll turn off timeline. Okay, so we have a few resources here. Now, the team planner allows you to better plan and supervise your resources so that you can easily see resource conflicts. And how you access the team planner is from the View tab. If you click on Team Planner, it shows you the resources that you've currently entered in your project schedule. And at this point, none of these are over allocated, but let's say Gantt chart view. Let's say I have this task and this task with the same resource starting at the same time. If I go to the Team Planner, I now see these two tasks are overlapping and the resource name appears red. With the Team Planner, I can actually take a task and drag it over to a different timeline when that resource is free. Another detail that is new is the Task Inspector. And if you go to the Tasks tab and look under the Tasks group, you'll see Inspect. And when you click on this, it opens up a Task Inspector section here on the left-hand side of your screen, and you'll be able to see in this working area the task dependencies, any current conflicts that the Task Inspector finds. Like right now, there are no conflicts, there are no over-allocated resources, so the Task Inspector is really just letting us know that the project schedule looks actually very good. So I'm going to change that because it already started. When you click on a cell, it goes through each task, lets you know where it is in terms of its state of showing any conflicts or not. And so far this looks very good. To close a Task Inspector, simply click on the Close checkbox. Now, another important feature about Project 2010 is that if you go in and start building a new project, let's just say I'm creating a blank project, you'll notice that when you start typing your task names, let's say I just take project name, task, we'll say start, milestone, and then task 1, task 2. Now, notice that the duration, start, finish, predecessors, etc., none of that data was filled in. In previous versions of project, it would have automatically filled in whatever the current date is for your project, or what you had set as the start date for your tasks. In this version of project, you can actually manually enter data without it automatically calculating. And this is very helpful for figuring out what you're going to do. Also because typically for a project, when you first start, you won't know the details needed for planning it out, but you might want to just write in some information to get you started. So by default, everything will be manually scheduled, meaning it won't change any dates unless you put them in. So for example, let's say this is a milestone. I'm going to format my text styles for milestones. Clicking on the format button, going to text styles, I'm going to change all my milestones to be blue. And let's say I have this task, it's going to take 3 days, this task will take 5 days. Now notice there's no start and finish date in here. That's because I have this set for manually scheduled. Everything is manually scheduled. So when I click on the task, it says manually scheduled. Now if I want this to be automatically scheduled, I can select the whole plan and click on auto schedule. And as soon as I do that, it automatically fills in the dates. And as I go forward and type in my task, again, it's set to default for manual schedule. Okay, let me select this schedule because it has coding and then beta 1 and then some more coding and then beta 2. Now let's say you're planning your project and you have some active tasks, but then you decide, let me make some of these inactive. I don't think I really want to have them anymore. So what you can do is highlight these tasks, go to the Tasks tab, and select Inactivate. And when you click on Inactivate under Schedule, then it makes the selected task, as it says in this pop-up window that appears, it makes the selected task inactive so that the tasks no longer affect the schedule. And that means you, in the project, they remain in the project schedule, but they don't affect the resources availability or how other tasks are scheduled. And what they'll look like is grayed out tasks in your project schedule. If for some reason you wanted to activate them again, you can just highlight them and click on the inactive, it becomes active, and they're back in your schedule. So another nice feature is the optimized resource calendar. And how we can see that is when you go to the resource sheet, and you can see on the resource sheet that, let me just make some of these columns smaller. By default, you have a standard calendar for your resources, and if you had created another base calendar, you would have that option here. But let's say, on the standard calendar for Sally, if you double click, it opens up the resource information. Actually, hold on, let me double click on Sally. There we go. There's a change working time button, and here we're able to, for Sally, create any exceptions, create specific weeks which there are exceptions for her, manage the times on the details button for her for any day of the week. These are details that we're going to walk through in more depth in other videos. But this ability to drill down and optimize the resource calendars is available here in 2010. Also, another detail is from the resource sheet, you'll notice that we have more resource types. Let me just expand these columns. Resource types include cost, material, and work. In previous versions, cost was not there. We're also going to elaborate on how you can use that in other videos as well. Having the type cost for resources allows you to define specific cost types, like a accommodations or catering or traveling costs, and then assign them to specific tasks. So that's an important detail. We're going to walk through that in a later video. And another important feature in this version is the ability to do more controlled budgeting. Budgeting was available in 2007, but you'll notice how in 2010 you can create budget resources for every resource, or as many budgeting groups as you want, and we're going to walk through that as well. So going back to some of the higher level concepts in 2010, I want to point out that when you go Backstage on the File tab and click on Save and Send, you'll notice that 2010 allows you to sync your project tasks to a task list, which is actually a feature available in SharePoint. SharePoint has task lists. So 2010 allows you to synchronize your project schedule with a task list in SharePoint. Of course, this feature is available if you have Project Professional, and it works with SharePoint Server 2010 and Foundation Server 2010. Synchronizing your tasks to SharePoint basically allows, for those of you who are familiar with SharePoint, allows project managers to quickly share their status or create reports that can be viewed across your organization through a SharePoint site. And in a future video, we're going to walk you through the details of how to actually synchronize your schedule. So in a nutshell, those are some of the high-level changes that are unique in Project 2010 compared to Project 2007. And now we're going to step through some of the important details that you need to know in order to actually use this tool. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next lesson.